Rome, 166 AD. A plague had just killed 5 million people across the empire. The generals were revolting, the treasury was bleeding, and the most powerful man in the known world sat alone in his tent on the German frontier, not issuing orders, not summoning advisors, writing in a private journal that he never intended anyone to read. No audience, no performance, just a man holding himself accountable in the dark. That journal survived nearly 2,000 years. The men who were loud that year did not. What if everything people called your weakness was actually the reason they could never control you? You have felt this, not the plague or the frontier, the specific loneliness of being the person in the room who sees clearly and says nothing. The meeting where the wrong decision was made loudly and confidently, and you watched it happen and said nothing. And later you were right, and it did not matter, because you had already been filed away as the quiet one, the one who does not contribute, the one who needs to speak up more. You have been handed that feedback your whole life, as if your silence were a malfunction. It is not a malfunction. It is the thing they cannot measure, so they called it a deficit. Here is what nobody tells you. Every system built to evaluate you, school, work, social groups, was designed by people who confused volume with value. They built the rubric around what they could see. Your silence was never on the rubric. That does not mean it was not working. It means they did not have the instrument to measure what you were actually doing. Marcus Aurelius left behind 121 pages of private writing. Historians have studied those pages for centuries, not because Aurelius was the greatest military mind Rome produced. He was not. Not because he was the most politically cunning emperor. He was not that either. They study those pages because in them you can watch a man in real time choosing composure over chaos thousands of times across decades under conditions that would have broken most people publicly and permanently. He did not write those pages to be admired. He wrote them because he understood something that took researchers nearly 1,800 years to document scientifically. In 1977, decades after his early research began, psychologist Walter Mischel published findings from a long-running study on self-regulation. His central discovery was not about willpower, it was about architecture. The people who could delay gratification, who could sit inside discomfort without immediately resolving it, had built a fundamentally different internal structure than those who could not. They did not have more discipline, they had more distance between stimulus and response, a gap. That gap is where judgment lives. Aurelius built his entire reign inside that gap. Every time he did not react publicly to betrayal, every time he absorbed chaos without letting it surface on his face, he was operating from inside that gap. You have been living there your entire life. You called it shyness. It was never shyness. Think about the last time someone challenged you publicly. A coworker dismissed your idea in a meeting. A friend contradicted you in a group. A stranger online said something designed to make you respond. The reactive person fired back immediately. They closed the gap completely. They let the stimulus become the response with nothing in between. And in doing so, they handed the room a map of exactly where they could be pushed. You stayed quiet, maybe for 2 seconds, maybe longer. In those seconds, you ran a calculation that the reactive person is not capable of running because they never built the gap to run it in. You assessed whether a response served any purpose. Most of the time it did not, so you said nothing. That is not passivity. That is the most sophisticated form of control available to a human being. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius with a warning that reads like it was written last week. He said that nothing is more ruinous to good character than sitting idly in a crowd, because a crowd always pulls you toward its noise, its pace, its need for constant reaction.
He was not telling Lucilius to avoid people. He was telling him to guard the gap, to protect the space between what happens to you and what you do about it. Because once the crowd gets inside that space, once their noise fills the gap, you lose the only territory that was ever actually yours. You have been guarding that territory your whole life without knowing it had a name. Here is where it gets specific. The gap does not just protect you from reacting badly, it changes how the room experiences you. There is a documented psychological phenomenon researchers call the Asch conformity effect. In the 1950s, Solomon Asch showed that when one person in a group refuses to conform to obvious social pressure simply by staying quiet and not agreeing, other people in the group gain the courage to dissent too. One calm non-reactor changes the entire group dynamic without saying a single word. You have done this. You have been in rooms where your stillness made other people reconsider. You never got credit for it because nobody could point to what you did. You did nothing. That was exactly the point.
But it goes deeper than that. Picture something closer to home, a family dinner. Someone brings up a subject everyone knows is a trap. Money, an old argument, a decision somebody made that hurt someone else. The table gets loud fast. Two people defend themselves. A third tries to referee. Voices stack on top of voices. And then there is the one person at the table who says nothing. Not because they have nothing to say, because they are watching. They notice who raises their voice first. They notice who changes the subject to protect themselves. They notice the exact moment someone lies, not from the words, but from the pause before the words. 20 minutes later, when everyone else has forgotten half of what was said in the heat of it, that person remembers everything. They remember it with a clarity nobody else at that table has because they were the only one not spending their energy performing. This happens in your life more than you register. The office meeting where a bad decision gets made and you watch exactly who pushed for it and why. The friend group conversation where you can tell who is being honest and who is managing their image. You have this radar. Loud people cannot build it because building it requires the very stillness they never practice. The person who reacts to everything has told the room everything it needs to know about them. Their triggers are visible, their insecurities are mapped, their edges are marked. They are readable, and a readable person is a manageable person. The room knows how to handle them. It knows what to say to make them defensive, what to say to make them perform, what to say to make them shrink. You are not readable. Not because you are hiding, because you have not handed anyone the map. That is not a small thing. In every room you enter, that is the most significant thing about you, and it operates before you open your mouth.
Here is what nobody in your life has ever said directly to you. The people who told you to speak up more were not trying to help you. They were trying to make you easier to read. A quiet person in a room full of performers is unsettling. You cannot be categorized. You cannot be filed. You sit outside the system they built to manage people, and that makes the system uncomfortable. So the system told you the problem was yours. It was never yours. You are not the person who failed to perform. You are the person who refused to perform, paid a social price for the refusal, and kept refusing anyway. That is not a small thing. Most people cave by 30. They learn the performance, they put it on, they stop being unsettling, they become manageable. You did not. Whether that was a choice or simply your nature, the result is the same. You are still in possession of the only thing that cannot be taught to the people who gave it away early: the gap, the distance, the space where the real decisions get made. Tonight, do one thing. The next time you feel the pressure to fill silence, in a conversation, in a meeting, anywhere, let it sit for 3 seconds longer than feels comfortable. Do not fill it. Watch what happens in the other person. Watch what they do with the silence you refuse to resolve for them. That 3 seconds will show you more about that person than an hour of conversation would. And it will show them something about you that no amount of speaking ever could. If this video found you at the right time, that is not an accident. The loud world will not applaud this kind of strength right away. It rarely notices it at all. But the people who master their own silence were never doing this for applause. They were doing it because they understood something the room did not. If you were one of them, this channel is for you. Subscribe to Stoic95 and let every video be the next brick. The work continues.